Celtic Myths and Legends by T.W. Rolleston. Chapter 5, Tales of the Ultonian Cycle. Okay, just trying to think of it for a second. Deirdre and the Sons of Usna. We have now to turn to a story in which Cuchulainn takes no part. It is the chief of the preliminary tales to the cattle spoil of Coedni. There was among the lords of Ulster, it is said, one named Phelim, son of Dal, who on a certain day made a great feast for the king. And the king came with his druid Cathbad, and Fergus MacRoy, and many heroes of the Red Branch. And while they were making merry over the roasted flesh, and wheaten cakes, and Greek wine, a messenger from the women's apartments came to tell Phelim that his wife had just borne him a daughter. So all the lords and warriors drank health to the newborn infant, and the king bade Cathbad perform divination in the manner of the Druids, and foretell what the future would have in store for Phelim's babe. Cathbad gazed upon the stars, and drew the horoscope of the child, and he was much troubled. And at length he said, "The infant shall be fairest among the women of Erin, and shall wed a king, but because of her shall death and ruin come upon the province of Ulster." Then the warriors would have put her to death upon the spot, but Connor forbade them. "I will avert the doom," he said, "for she shall wed no foreign king, but she shall be my own mate when she is of age." So he took away the child and committed it to his nurse Levercum, and the name they gave it was Deirdre. And Connor charged Levercum that the child should be brought up at a strong dune, in the solitude of a great wood, and that no young man should see her or she him until she was of marriageable age for the king to wed. And there she dwelt, seeing none but her nurse and Cathbad, and sometimes the king, now growing an aged man, who would visit the dune from time to time to see that all was well with the folk there, and that his commands were observed. One day, when the time for marriage of Deirdre and Connor was drawing near, Deirdre and Levercum looked over the rampart of their dune. It was winter. A heavy snow had fallen in the night, and in the still frosty air the trees stood up as if wrought in silver, and the green before the dune was a sheet of unbroken white, save that in one place a scullion had killed a calf for their dinner, and the blood of the calf lay on the snow. And as Deirdre looked, a raven lit down from a tree hard by, and began to sip the blood. "O nurse," cried Deirdre suddenly, "such, and not like Connor, would be the man that I would love, his hair like the raven's wing, and in his cheek the hue of blood, and his skin as white as snow." "Thou hast pictured a man of Connor's household," said the nurse. "Who is he?" asked Deirdre. "He is Nacy, the son of Usna, a champion of the Red Branch," said the nurse. Thereupon Deirdre entreated Levercum to bring her to speak with Nacy, and because the old woman loved the girl and would not have her wedded to the aged king, she at last agreed. Deirdre implored Nacy to save her from Connor, but he would not, till at last her entreaties and her beauty won him, and he vowed to be hers. Then secretly, one night, he came with his two brethren, Ardon and Ainlay, and bore away Deirdre with Levarcum, and they escaped the king's pursuit, and took ship for Scotland, where Nacy took service with the king of the Picts. Yet here they could not rest, for the king got sight of Deirdre, and would have her taken from Nacy. But Nacy with his brothers escaped, and in the solitude of Glen Etive they made their dwelling by the lake, and there lived in the wild wood by hunting, fishing, seeing no man but themselves and their servants. And the years went by, and by Connor made no sign, but he did not forget, and his spies told him of all that befell Nacy and Deirdre. At last, judging that Nacy and his brothers would have tired of solitude, he sent the bosom friend of Nacy, Fergus, son of Roy, to bid them return, and to promise them that all would be forgiven. Fergus went joyfully, and joyfully did Nacy and his brothers hear the message. But Deirdre foresaw evil, and would fain have sent Fergus home alone. But Nacy blamed her for her doubt and suspicion, and bade her mark that they were under the protection of Fergus, whose safeguard no king in Ireland would dare to violate. And they at last made ready to go. On landing in Ireland, they were met by Baruch, a lord of the Red Branch, who had his dune close by, and he bade Fergus to a feast he had prepared for him that night. I may not stay, said Fergus, for I must convey Deirdre and the sons of Usna safely to Emain Macha. Nevertheless, said Baruch, thou must stay with me tonight, for it is a gaish for thee to refuse a feast. Deirdre implored him not to leave them, but Fergus was tempted by the feast, and feared to break his gaish, and he bade his two sons, Elon the fair, and Baino the red, to take charge of the party in his place, and he himself abode with Baruch. And so the party came to Emain Macha, and they were lodged in the house of the Red Branch. But Connor did not receive them. After the evening meal, as he sat, drinking heavily and silently, he sent a messenger to bid Levarcum come before him. How is it with the sons of Usna? He said to her. It is well, she said. Thou hast got the three most valorous champions in Ulster in thy court. Truly the king has those three need fear no enemy. It is well with Deirdre, he asked. She is well, said the nurse, but he has lived many years in the wild wood, and toil and care have changed her. The little of her beauty of old now remains to her, O king. Then the king dismissed her, and sat drinking again. But after a while he called to him a servant named Trendorn, and bade him go to the Red Branch house, and mark who was there, and what they did. But when Trendorn came to the place, the place was bolted and barred for the night, and he could not get an entrance. And at last he mounted on a ladder, and looked in at a high window. And there he saw the brothers of Nacy and the sons of Fergus, as they talked or cleaned their arms, or made them ready for slumber. And there sat Nacy, with a chessboard before him, and playing chess with him was the fairest of women that he had ever seen. But as he looked in wonder at the noble pair, suddenly one caught sight of him, and rose with a cry, pointing to the face at the window. And Nacy looked up and saw it, and seizing a chessman from the board, he hurled it at the face of the spy, and it struck out his eye. Then Trendorn hastily descended and went back with his bloody face to the king. "I've seen them," he cried. "I've seen the fairest woman of the world, and but that Nacy had struck my eye out, I had been looking on her still." Then Connor arose and called for his guards, and bade them bring the sons of Usna before them, maintaining his messenger. And the guards went. But the first Bainu, son of Fergus, with his retinue, met them, and as the sword's point drove them back. But Nacy and Deirdre continued quietly to play chess, for, said Nacy, "It is not seemly that we should seek to defend ourselves while we are under the protection of the sons of Fergus." But Connor went, Bainu, and with a great gift of lands he bought him over to desert his charge. Then Ilan took up the defence of the Red Branch hostel, but the two sons of Connor slew him. And then, at last, Nacy and his brothers seized their weapons and rushed amid the foe, and many were they who fell before the onset. Then Connor entreated Cathbad the Druid to cast spells upon them, lest they should get away and become the enemies of the province. And he vowed to do them no hurt if they were taken alive. Now, if my stomach was smarter, it would know that it's eating soon. So Cathbad conjured up, as it were, a lake of slime that seemed to be about the feet of the sons of Usna, and they could not tear their feet from it. And Nacy caught up Deirdre and put her on his shoulder, for they seemed to be sinking in the slime. Then the guards and servants of Connor seized and bound them, and brought them before the king. And the king called upon man after man to come forward and slay the sons of Usna, but none would obey him, till at last Owen, son of Diracht, and a prince of Ferny, came and took the sword of Nacy, and with one sweep he shore off the heads of all three, and so they died. Then Connor took Deirdre perforce, and for a year she abode with him in the palace of Emain Macha. But during all that time she never smiled. At length Connor said, "What is it that you hate most of all on earth, Deirdre?" And she said, "Thou thyself, and Owen, son of Diracht." And Owen was standing by. "Then thou shalt go to Owen for a year," said Connor. But when Deirdre mounted the chariot behind Owen, she kept her eyes on the ground, for she would not look on those who thus tormented her. And Connor said, taunting her, "Deirdre, the glance of thee between me and Owen is the glance of an ewe between two rams." Then Deirdre started up, and flinging herself head foremost from the chariot, she dashed her head against a rock and fell dead. And when they buried her, it is said, there grew from her grave and from Nacy's 2 yew trees, whose tops, when they were full grown, met each other over the roof of the great church of Armagh, and intertwined together, and none could part them. So we see this theme going on in the Lovers card of the Fairy Tarot series. And again, I'm not Wicca. It's I redo things and comment on things. But we see some serious issues here. One, okay, fine. People can marry a child or set up to marry a child, but when it comes time to consummate it, whoever it is that has reached the age of consummating marriages and are actually fulfilling the terms in terms of, okay, they're considered financially responsible or whatever the term may be, that they're mentally sound, that sort of thing. they're really under no obligation to keep, they're under no obligation to uphold the marriage that was arranged or set up in their childhood. And to think that, okay, I saved a child's life, that's good. But to keep the child locked up because at some point you're going to get access to a young woman, that's an issue. That shouldn't per se be the goal of taking care of an orphan, because you're like, well, there's going to be a young woman at some point. But all these people don't seem to value her as a person, and she kills herself because that's not encouraged. Well, I'm not saying that. That's not quite the thing. But, had something else been encouraged, maybe she would have had something to live for. But we see yew trees being planted in cemeteries in particular. Nowhere else around you can see yew trees, but you'll see yew trees planted around cemeteries because of such mythology.